young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, good morning to you, everybody. Good morning to the world. Good morning to every little furry creature that happens to stumble into the Join Up Dots net. It's a delight to have you on the show. It's going to be a good one today because today's guest, he's already promised to serenade me. He's wooing me. He's romancing me from a distance because he's in Canada at the moment, and he has sat up very, very late. It's all right for me. This is the first show of the day, so I've just got up. I've had me breakfast. I've had me coffee, and I'm ready to go. But he's desperate. He's desperate to go to bed. But he sounds like a man who, you know, he's found his thing, and it's true that he's certainly got a fascinating story that's led him to finding his thing. And at the moment, he's a massage therapist by profession, and he's the founder of Relationship Minimalism. That's hard to say. A relationship philosophy designed to answer one question. Is it possible for men to apply the 80-20 principle to create love, connection, stability, here we go, fellas, and sexual passion in a long-term relationship with their wife or their girlfriend? Well, if you've listened to, and I should have said boyfriend on there, it works all way. We've got to be politically correct on this show. Well, if you've listened to more than a couple of episodes of Join Up Dots, you have heard me talk often of my love of Paretos Principle, but I've never thought of it being applied to people too. And when you see the amount of seemingly unconnected dots that have occurred in his life, then you can see it. I just had to have him on the show. As he says in his own words, from the age of 5 to 10, I grew up in Venezuela, Mexico, and Indonesia. And when I got back, I couldn't fit into Canadian culture and ended up homeschooling myself to finish high school. I had serious aspirations of being a professional songwriter for the first 10 years of my adult life, and I learned extreme self-honesty. I'd work on an idea for weeks and then realise it wasn't good enough and start over for nearly 5 years. At the same time, I fell into a career as a live TV cameraman and shot my first NHL hockey game when I was barely 21, making me the youngest in Canada. And I wound up in massage therapy school on a whim at 23 with no intention of working as a professional. I just thought it would be a good skill to have if I ever got a wife and family. Now, as he points out, no one really creates a master plan to set off as a songwriter and do TV broadcasts on the side while going to massage school so they can spark a revolution in the way men relate to and understand women. But it certainly all makes sense now. I love this feeling of, hey, let's go and do this, as it seems a good idea, as that is how we find the thing that lights us up inside, not by waiting for the passion to magically appear around you like some people suggest. Get out there, do things, talk to people, and be aware of what is in offer, which is exactly what today's guest did, and he continues to do so. So when did the idea of using the 80-20 in the environment of relationships first occur to him? And was it oh wow, I've just discovered something that can change lives. I almost did a Canadian accent then and then stopped. I'm going to do it anyway. Wow, I've just discovered... No, that's terrible. And does he actually see that what he's been doing over the last few months is truly his thing, or is it just the start of the journey that was waiting for him? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mark Stefanishyn. Good morning, Mark. How are you, sir?
Hello, David. How are you?
Oh, that's very sexy, Mark. Very sexy, deep, and menacing. That's not the Mark I was speaking to beforehand. That was all flirty and was willing to sing to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. The intro was it made my head spin. It was good.
It's funny. I talk about this all the time, but I'm going to talk about it again because we've got time to fill. But when you write it, you kind of get such a great flavour of the person that when I actually first connect with you, and literally we connect 2 seconds before recording, I really feel that I know you. It's really a weird feeling. Is that a good way of building connections? Do you think it's a good way of anyone, and you're in the relationship game, but is it a good way of actually sort of doing your homework on people, or does that become a bit stalky in the sort of relationship field?
I don't find it stocky at all to know what you're going into or who you're going to be talking to or what their beliefs are or anything like that. I think that's perfectly acceptable in this day and age. You got to know where people are coming from so that you can know how to relate to them and speak their language. and then build rapport, right? So yeah, I don't find it stocky at all.
Now, when you talk to your people, and we're going to start right with your business at the moment to frame what you're doing, do you do it on Skype? Do you do it face-to-face? How have you built this client base? Because it's brilliant. The 80-20 principle is one of the things that I love, and I'm an absolute advocate in Join Up Dots land of only doing the stuff that brings me the greatest rewards, and I forget everything else. And in podcasting land, you get so many people telling you, oh, you should be on this platform, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Rubbish. Just find the thing that works for you and do more of it. So when you're doing your business, how do you connect with the people? How have you managed to build up this client base that works for you?
Right now, I'm actually in the process of building that client base. So it's actually been a really long road of writing up until this point. It's been a good year and a half of just trying to get the ideas out in a way that other people, that men can relate to, and then on the same hand that women agree with, because I feel like that's a really important part of the dynamic. So right now, it's just for me, it's just writing, putting stuff out there. Some of my writing is going on different websites, and now I'm starting to do the podcast thing for the summer to kind of get the word out there. And then, we're going to transition that into workshops and speaking, I'm sure.
It's a very interesting read, your website. I'll be honest, a lot of guests I go over and I dabble. I just sort of flick through and it's pretty much standard fare. But with yours, and I'll be honest, this is a family show, so I'm going to try to keep this clean. There's some dirty stuff going on there, Mark. There's some stuff that actually made me want to read more. And one of the things that grabbed my attention, and believe me, fellas out there, any of you in a relationship, you'll be making notes at this bit. It was all about how to make your girlfriend or your partner or your boyfriend want sexy time, even when they're tired. Even when they're tired, Mark. You have got the magic touch.
Yeah, I do. Do you want me to talk about how to do that, or what would you like to know?
I think my listeners want to know, don't you think? I think we cling to a little bit of special cuddles every now and again. And when you get into a marriage, it kind of goes off the boil somehow, doesn't it? At the very beginning, you literally can't wait. Any opportunity, any doorway, any bus, whatever, you're ripping at each other. But once you get into the actual sort of relationship, it cools, and you seem to be a man who's got your finger on the pulse that can bring it up to the boil very, very quickly. So keeping it clean so that kids aren't suddenly asking questions to their mum and dad. How do we do it? What's the magic ingredient?
The magic ingredient is learning how to use, so as a man, learning how to use your hands to actually calm a woman down. So when someone's tired, typically if they're tired, they've had a long day, they're stressed out, maybe there's stuff that's happened throughout the day that's, they just don't have a lot of energy. Oftentimes when a woman is having that experience, she's going to say, I feel tired, I feel too tired, this type of thing. But it's not that she's actually too tired or that exhausted. It's that she's locked in what we call a sympathetic nervous system state. So you've got sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. And then you've got parasympathetic nervous system, which is like the rest and the digest system. And what's important to understand about female sexuality is that they need to feel relaxed before they can get aroused, particularly in a long-term relationship. The rules are a little bit different, like you say, at the beginning of a relationship. But as time goes on, the precursor states to arousal in a woman are relaxation and safety. If you can create those two things, you will move her towards arousal by giving her body a chance to relax. And then there's by doing that, there's also a lot of she'll draw a lot of emotional meaning around that, like, oh, he's being so nice to me, that he's being very special, I feel cared for, I feel loved.
What's he after?
It's important.
Will it not go to what's he after? What's he after? Are they not just going to go that after 15, 20 years?
Could be. It depends. It really depends on obviously the specific relationship, and if the man has a habit of only touching his partner when he wants to have sex. If that's the case, then yeah, she'll have sort of a Pavlovian response that understands that this touch is also carries with it. What's the word? It has an expectation of performance. And so that's why it's important for men to start thinking about how to use touch throughout the day and throughout the relationship as a way to communicate with the body, so that she doesn't feel like, that she's being taken advantage of, or that she's being requested to perform.
Yeah, but aren't we being requested to perform, though, Mark? Or does it operate differently from men? Are we not individuals? Do we not have passions? Do we not have moments of tiredness? Are we expected to just go yes at every second of the day when the opportunity's there?
You're saying for men?
Yeah, for men. If I'm sort of doing my work and my special lady comes up to me and then starts rubbing my back, am I suddenly expected to put my headphones down, turn my microphone off, and then just go for it? Or should I
I don't think
I be wooed as well?
No, you got to feel that out and see how far she takes it. But she might.
She doesn't have to take it far. I'll be honest. She doesn't have to take it far.
Yeah, then it's important to understand that when we get into the long-term relationship, there is a very important aspect of emotional intimacy that needs to be happening, or it is helpful to have that happen throughout the day, so that when it comes time to go to the bedroom, she doesn't feel like she's having to like cold start the engine. It's because for a lot of guys, it's easy to get wrapped up in your day, and men compartmentalize sex a lot easier than women, right? It's for men, it's kind of like we're in the bedroom or we're not, and that's a very clear distinction that we're able to make. But because of this importance of emotional intimacy in turning on a woman, those lines are they're non-existent for a woman, and so men need to start understanding that if they want to give her the type of sexual experience that she's interested in having again, and sort of building up that or rebuilding that sexual energy that was there at the beginning just naturally because of the excitement and the mystery and just the whole newness of it.
I tell you what, though, Mark, I wouldn't even get to the bedroom. I'd be halfway down the garden. I'd be on the boil. I'd be on the boil. That's the kind of power that my wife has. Or maybe she keeps me waiting for too long. I don't know. So you are somebody. Have you always had this super talent, or is it something that you have discovered when you was going through sort of your teenage years? Were you Mr. Rampant? Were you like a wild bull just running around doing your magical touching?
No, I wasn't. I was really shy. I was very nerdy. Like we said in the intro, it was difficult coming back to Canada from all these other places and having such different experiences. And so it was really tough to fit in. And a lot of the culture I had a hard time understanding. And what I observed in the culture I was living in here in Canada was that there was a general understanding that men needed to trick women into having sex, or there was always this subversiveness around pursuing a woman. And I remember, I don't know what show it was, but there was, I seem to remember watching TV, and there was just like this classic sitcom, and there, the couple's in bed, and the guy kind of looks over and he's like, hey, do you want to get it on? And she's like, no, I'm tired, I have a headache. And then the laugh track starts, right? And there's ha 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 ha. And I was just like, I I never want that to happen to me, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen to me. And so that's kind of what started the journey. And this was, I was in my teens, about 12 years ago, I'd say, when this was happening. And back then, I don't know what it's like in Britain, if you guys had a sort of a bit of a pickup artist scene going on over there about 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, it was basically get about 15 drinks down the lady and try your arm. That was basically, we're not subtle in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
I think the Americans know it a bit better for some reason.
Well, the Americans were experimenting with it quite a bit. And this was, now you can go online and find out, this pickup artist stuff. It's easy to find. 10 years ago, it was like, everyone was using cute names on the internet, and it was just a bunch of nerds trying to figure out how the hell are we going to be able to relate to women, because we never picked up those skills. So I was kind of observing that, but my shyness was such that I was never actually able to do any of these activities. I was just learning about them. And I found it interesting that even in something as personal as who you are, or as something as seemingly complicated as a relationship, there's still room to learn. There's still room to observe yourself, change the actions that you're taking, and get a different result. And so that's kind of where it started. And knowing that I wasn't going to be the type of guy that could be subversive or misleading or condescending. None of that. It just wasn't going to work for me. So I had to find a way, my own way. And I just figured, well, if I just really figure out how a woman's body works, that's a good way in, and it'll work for her too.
It's a good way in. That's going to be the title of the whole show, I think.
Oh no!
I think that's you've written it. It came out of your mouth, sir. You've got a one-track mind. So if we get back onto the entrepreneurial journey that you've been on, the thing that sort of fascinated me in your whole story, and you've got a very sort of, we could do about 4 or 5 episodes here, but it was the fact that you got trapped for about 5 years into never thinking something's good enough and starting over. You'd work on an idea for weeks, and then you'd realize, no, hang on, it's got to be better than that. Where we do a lot of sort of training in Join Up Dots land, and we pretty much say, it's going to be crap at the beginning. It's going to be crap. And one of the great things that you can do now, and I was talking about it the other day, is using a site called Wayback Machine, where you can go back and look at people's first attempts. So you can look at people's first websites, and they take a snapshot, and you can sort of follow the progression through, and it's all rubbish, but we don't see that it's rubbish at the beginning because we're not paying attention. We only see when it's good. So when you look back on it, how many of those sort of ideas that you did work on, when you look back on them now, do you think actually I think if I carried on pushing through with that, it would have been all right?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, because music is a really interesting field. And the way that I was approaching music, I was young, and musicians are very revered in our culture, and there's a certain amount of stardom that's attached to an art form, which is very tied, or the implication is that it's very tied to someone's self-expression of who they are. It's their creative output, all this type of stuff. And when you attach fame and fortune and all that stuff to it, it gets really convoluted for a young kid to sort out that mess. And going into music, I had always said very often that this was going to be the way that I learned who I was as an individual. And I wasn't really sure how that was going to happen. And all I knew was that I was going to have to work very, very hard at it if I wanted to make music that people beyond my friends would listen to. Like, if you actually want to be a top songwriter, like, there's not a lot of jobs out there for it. Like, you really have to forge that path on your own. And it was, looking back at it now, the thing that this whole self-development thing that I was doing with music, what I really learned was this concept of self, being honest with yourself. Like, is this actually good, or do I want it to be good? And I think that with any creative endeavor, cultivating that awareness, or being able to take that step back from the thing that you're writing, or the song that you're making, or whatever it is that you're doing, being able to take a step back and just be honest with yourself, set the ego aside, because you're going to want it to be good. You want this song to be the song, and you want it to come together so fast, but you've got to, for me anyways, that was such a process of it was such an important process for me to be able to sort of produce or edit myself and refine it and refine it and refine it. And I've done the same thing with my writing that's on the website. Like this, what's being shared now is the process of, well over a year now of writing. And to be honest, like I appreciate the idea of just put it out there and you'll get better. But there's something about that for me personally, and I'm not like, if it's just me, right? So if someone else has their other way, that's totally fine. And you should totally do that. For me, even thinking about the first things I wrote for my website, I'm kind of glad that they're not out there, because they weren't that good.
It's funny you say that, though, because that's what I love about podcasting. I love the fact that you can go back to episode 1, and and I mention this a lot. If you go back to episode 2, it was the first episode I ever recorded. I pressed record and I started becoming a podcaster, and I like that because you're not polishing up something that people can't then replicate. That's what I am really anti about, when you see the finished article and people have kind of wiped clean their backstory somehow. I like the fact that in podcasting you can follow back and you can go, God, he was rubbish after 10 episodes, but after 100 episodes, I can see he's getting a little bit better, and it sort of moves on. And which is why I don't do any editing on the show. We basically press record and we put it out at the end. And I love that, because it's quick, it's instant, and it makes you want to get better by doing it live. It gets you in the flow. When you're doing your writing, though, do you not sense sometimes that was easy, and when you look back on it, it was brilliant, it was just good? Is that not what you should be aiming for, getting into the flow and allowing the quality to just come through instead of editing it all the time?
Yeah, for sure. But that takes time. It takes time to get comfortable moving into that flow state. My life is based around entering into that flow state with everything I've done, whether it's music or, shooting an NHL broadcast. That's a level of flow for sure. Same with writing. Like, it's all about that. I totally understand that flow state. But what I've found personally for me is that in order to get there, I kind of need to know the structure of the task. I have to be somewhat familiar with it before I can really get there. Now I'm able to write something and get the ideas out there. But especially, maybe it's just because what I write about is relationships and sex, and a lot of the ideas that I'm coming up with are, this is just my opinion, but I entirely unique to myself. Like, I'm drawing on influences from outside the sphere to come up with my ideas, but I've never what I write about are principles of how I act in my relationship, but when it's much harder to pull that stuff out and put it on the page in a way that like makes sense, because once you start talking about relationships, it's easy to go off into the ether and have things not make practical sense anymore. And I really, really try hard to speak a language that empowers men, that allows for improvement, that doesn't judge or cause any sort of feelings of less than. And then at the same time, I try to stay away from using a lot of really mystical words, because I find that that's very common when we get in relationships. And I think that can be quite alienating for a lot of people out there. So yeah, the flow state for writing and it is coming. There was actually one piece I did last week where I wrote it under an intense deadline, and then I I looked at it the next day and I was like, yeah, I don't have to do much to this. But in the beginning, it was a slog.
No, I think it is. And what you are doing so well is you're finding that thing inside a theme, which is naturally you. You're finding the authentic self within the task. And I'm going to play some words now, but then we're going to talk a little bit more about this, because I think this is a fascinating part of the process of how people find success. Here's Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
So, reflecting on those words, are you actually at the point now that this is it? You found a thing that you love, or are you moving towards the real dream? You don't quite know what it is at the moment, but you can feel that there's something bigger for you.
I very much feel like the work that I'm doing now is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now. There's very little. Like, I literally had to force myself to play video games 2 weeks ago to take a break, which is remarkable for me. So I am all in on this, and I am going to see this project through to an end. I have a very real intention of taking this message and changing the way that men and women relate to each other. That is what I'm going to be doing.
And can I just jump in there, Mark?
Sorry.
Can I just jump in?
Sorry?
Is this the first time that you've ever felt that so strongly? Of all the other things that you've done, have you never felt that passion?
No, I felt that with music too. That was the first time I felt it, and so feeling that experience, I think it's important to recognize that, but at the same time, personally, the way my life has turned out, when you look at the ridiculous history that I have a very hard time sort of considering myself to be in the driver's seat. I'm kind of along for the ride and doing what I'm kind of called to do. That was music, and then initially that was music, and that got me to a certain point. That taught me certain lessons that moved me into the next bit, and then the next bit, and that leads up till now. I have no doubt that in 10 years I'm going to be on to some other thing for sure. But for right now, this is looking back on everything that I've done, it makes total sense. I can see how it's all prepared me to get here. And I'm sure that just given my age, where I'm headed is I can't fathom that either, but I know I'm headed there.
You know, when you find that thing within the task that really ignites you, it's like this show, Join Up Dots. I do not see myself stopping this in 10, 15, 20 years. I know that my life will be going off and doing different things, spinning off from it, because I'm already getting a lot of sort of requests to do stuff. But actually, the show, I can't see. I just cannot see myself stopping. And it's the first time ever in my life that I've had that. I have never felt that before, that this is me for the rest of my life. I've always been kind of like a meerkat, just popping my head up and looking around thinking, that's what I do now. But now I'm nailed on. And it's so important, isn't it, that you've got to find that feeling. You may not know the task. That's the key thing. For anyone out there listening, you may not know this is going to be the task I want to do, but you need to know how you feel inside, don't you, Mark?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that was a very short answer for a very profound statement for me, but Mark agrees.
I agree.
Mark agrees, and if Mark agrees, then you jot it down, because Mark knows about women, and to me, that is the super talent. But does it work with men as well? Men, gay relationships. Does it work with you, or do you got no idea? Do you only sort of focus in on the sort of man and lady relationships?
I don't have personal experience with that. I and honestly, where I'm from, I haven't come across a ton of particularly like gay males. I'm not saying they're not out there, none of that, but you gotta like keep in mind that I'm very secluded in my lifestyle. And so I don't have a lot of experience talking to that community. I understand that they will, it's easier to see like sort of male and female as sort of a spectrum or a continuum. And then the partners will embody the aspects of these energies as opposed to these are the hard genders. So I really make an effort to steer away from talking about things I don't know, because I feel like that's a large problem that we're having right now, given how much information can be put out there to people. I personally kind of make a commitment to speak to what I know, and then anybody else who's looking at that comes from a different background is more than welcome to interpret it in their own way, which I think we all should be doing anyways. Look at, read what I have to say. And if you're like, oh, this works for me, except for that part, then leave that part out, like by all means, totally fine. So yeah, I'm maybe one day I'll develop relationships where I can talk more about that. But yeah, for right now, I'm just, I don't feel qualified to talk about it because I just don't know.
But I open my mouth on every subject. It doesn't mean if I've got qualifications, if I've got an opinion, it's coming out, Mark. You're a man of restraint. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I just feel like, particularly with relationships, there's so much misinformation out there, and I just don't find that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the sound of my own voice. I'm sure I'm going to listen to this podcast again, but I just don't feel the need to have my say in everything. I'll speak to what I know, and that way I feel like, I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. And then, everybody else is, listen to it and apply what works for you. Think of it however you need to think about it, because in the end, this is about this is about my relationship with my girlfriend, and anybody who's listening should be looking at it about how does this apply to their relationship with their individual partner or more partners, right? Like it gets wild out there. So I really think everyone needs to start thinking more about empowering themselves to make their own decisions about the information that they're reading, and choosing to apply it directly to them rather than sort of broad terminology that gets really vague and doesn't do much.
I don't know about changing the title now to "It Gets Wild Out There." This as soon as you said that, I thought, what world is he talking about? I haven't seen. I've been with my wife now for, blimey, 26 years or something. I don't know what wild is, Mark. And to be honest, if I went into a wild town, it would scare me. It would scare me. Am I right to hold back, treasure what I've got, and just let it all happen?
Yeah, you've got to follow your thing. Fear is fear is such a interesting emotion, because sometimes there's very real reasons why that's there, and other times it's more of an indication of like, oh, go that way, look here. There's something going on in your perspective that is maybe skewed, and so therefore you're getting a fear response. So there's a chance that fear provides you the opportunity to learn more about yourself, or it could be a genuine fear. So it's tough to say, and so that really brings it back to, again, for me, that self-honesty. Being able to be honest with yourself. Do I really want this shiny thing, or do I want this shiny thing because I'm anxious about something else going on, right? It's a tough game.
I'll tell you what, all I want is my wife. And wifey, if you listen to this, I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I did today. And if you feel me touching your back when you're washing up, that's a signal. That's a signal, and I'm sending out the vibes that Mark has now trained me. So take off your marigolds, take off your washing up gloves, We're getting down to special cuddles. I've set it out there now, Mark. She can listen to this and she can know the signals, can't she?
Yeah. You do you, of course. But all I'll say is you'll find she'll probably respond better if you can do those little touches throughout the day without bringing it towards sex right away. Like, I know it's tough. I know it's really hard. But the more you can kind of delay gratification, the more, trust me, I think you'll thank me.
I'm changing it to, I know it's really hard now. I don't know how to actually change this title. You're just giving them to me all the time. So what you've done is something great. First of all, you've been on a journey and you've tried different things. Secondly, you've gone for something which, in the music environment, what you did was open yourself up. You started to be more aware of your feelings, which makes songs so much stronger. And little by little, you've channeled into an area, but then you've niched down. And where you have done something remarkable, I think, is by bringing Paretos Principle, Paretos Law into the environment of relationships. Now, I've never heard anyone do this before. Is this because I'm not in this wild environment that you're talking about? Or is it something that you sat down one day and thought, oh my God, yeah, if I do more of this, then that's me reward? How did that idea come to you? Because what you've done there, you have niched down into something which is specific, unique, and authentic to you, which ultimately will bring faster success.
Yeah, that I can't say that there was a conscious decision to sit down and look at it in that perspective, but I've been a big fan of Tim Ferriss for years, and I read The 4-Hour Body, so I was familiar with, I was unfortunately quite young when I first read The 4-Hour Body and very inexperienced in a lot of what was going on in that book. So it was hard for me to grasp things, but I understood that there was something in this book that I needed to understand. And having been someone who, did my own process of rapidly learning skill sets throughout the years. Once I saw it kind of condensed in The 4-Hour Chef, which is his most recent books, where he says, this is the formula to become world-class at a skill set in 6 months' time. And world-class is defined as the top 5% of the participating population. And so he breaks down how you would go about structuring the learning of whatever skill set you're going to be able to do so that you can progress extremely quickly. And then becoming familiar with that model, and also being someone who thought a lot about relationships and how I was acting in the relationship and what were the things that created that sort of love and that connection and all those reasons we get into relationships, right? Like, when she's kind of looking up at you with those starry eyes and she's just, you can tell, you can just feel the love emanating from her. I kind of use those experiences as the North Star of the relationship. Like, that is the goal, is to have more of those experiences. And then it's a question of, okay, if I want to have that experience, I can go about it a number of different ways, right? You could take her out on a date, and go on a fancy dinner. You could go on a vacation. You could buy her an expensive gift. Like, there's all these different ways to create that feeling. But then where Pareto's principle comes in is that there is going to be a way to create that state as quick as possible, or the fastest way to do it. And so then it was a matter of kind of looking at this formula and realizing that there's many costly ways to do this, but the simplest way was through physical touch. Because physical touch, it doesn't cost you anything to touch your wife. You can do it anytime. You don't have to wait to go somewhere. You don't have to wait to arrive at the destination of the date. There's no time investment, right? So you go on a date night. It's not just the an hour or hour and a half, however long. It's not just that time that you're spending on that. You're figuring out your schedules. When can we go? What can we do? Do we need a sitter? Travel time there and back. Like, there's a massive amount of time invested into that experience that often doesn't feel like it's the most bonding thing, right? You could say that, oh, well, any time spent together should be bonding time. And yeah, you can say that, but practically, is that ever the experience? Rarely. So I was looking at this 80-20 principle and realizing there are fast ways to get to this experience. And then the more we can have that experience, it turned out that starts to recreate the beginning relationship, what I call like that hypersexual energy where, you're just ready because it's two new partners. You can very much create that. You can very much recreate that 10, 15 years down the line. I would say that very much to anybody out there listening. There's a massive
What about 26, narrative. Mark? What about 26 years down the line? 10, 15, I've gone past that. I've gone past that. I want 26, 30, 40, and 50.
Done. No problem. It's all the same. It can totally happen because the thing I want to get the point across here is that there is a narrative in our culture that says that sexual passion dies in long-term relationships. Like we have this consensus that you're not going to be as interested sexually down the years. And I really, really caution everybody in buying into that. And I strongly suggest that is not the reality. It is a reality, and you could be having that experience, but it is not where you have to be headed if you rethink how relationships can be done.
I agree 100% what you're saying, because there are times in our relationships which, although you love that person, you'd be quite happy to kick them down the stairs because they're just sort of driving you mad. But as I always say to people, even at its worst time, I still know that what I've got is the best thing in my life. And that's a good starting point. Well, it's more than a starting point, isn't it? That's when you know that you are lobsters. You're lobsters for life and you're hooked together and you can't move on. But I still haven't got to that point of the 80-20. I wouldn't know how to build that into my relationship. Am I too far gone? Do you need to start this right at the very beginning when you first meet that person and you're in that kind of ripping clothes frenzy time? Do you need to think, right, I need to set my stall out on this one, or can you just do it any time? Am I too far gone, Mark? That's what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely not. And I thank you for bringing that up, because it is important to understand that these principles, like what I talk about, is extremely powerful. Like I'm literally teaching men how to change the physiological state of the female body. So you are literally increasing oxytocin production in her body. You are literally reducing cortisol. You are playing with dopamine responses by becoming very intentional with how you touch your partner. And that demands an incredible amount of respect for your partner. And I would highly caution that what I write about is for long-term relationships. Do not do this stuff when you first meet a woman, because by playing with these hormones, you will create someone who's very much addicted to you. It is a drug, and you don't want to have the experience of someone that you are not prepared to be incredibly bonded to. You don't want to be playing with this stuff. So I would, don't do it at the start of a relationship. It's already hypersexual. It's already good. Enjoy that moment. It's fine. This stuff is only for people who are very much interested in creating a lasting bond together. That's very important to speak about.
So what you're saying is, with power comes great responsibility. You've created some kind of inner super talent, and you've got to use it very sparingly. Use it at the right times, not all the time.
Yes, considering that the right time would be when you've decided that this person is someone that you want to go very deep with. If we talk about actually using the philosophy and the skill set of physical touch, I'm always recommending, sort of the way to start would be like just a really big hug when she comes home. From anytime she comes home, greet her with a really deep hug. Eventually, what you want is for her to kind of sigh and relax her body into you. That'll take around 6 to 10 seconds, right? So we're getting really practical here now, and this is kind of where the science of it comes in. But you want to this moment that you're creating is giving her body, you're speaking directly to her body, and you're giving her signals that say you're safe, you're loved, I missed you, welcome home. And just saying those words out loud, it's not the same at all, because if she's tired, if she's stressed out, if she's frustrated from work or whatever, you can say those things and they'll bounce right off of her. And but when you start communicating with your hands or with your body, hugs, this type of stuff, her body gets it right away, and she starts to feel these loving feelings that we typically associate with the beginning of the relationship.
Ah, this is great stuff. I'm in this, Mark. Every morning I hug my wife first thing in the morning, and as soon as she comes home at night, I give her a big hug, and then we sort of get on with the day. And I always hug my kids every morning and before they go to school, and when they wake up, and when they go to bed. I never used to be a big hugger, but my wife taught me about hugging, and I think it's one of those supportive gestures, isn't it? There's nothing in it other than saying I'm there for you.
Yeah, and that's again that's very important, that she can have the experience of feeling like you are there for her. That is what turns her on. Okay, that's very important to understand. For guys, you can look at your wife and be like, yeah, I'm ready to have sex with her just because I've seen her. It's not quite the same for women. The emotional connection is what's going to get them turned on. And that is confusing because they don't necessarily need as much of an emotional connection in the beginning. So there's a misunderstanding that things change. But have you ever, I guess if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But have you ever tried giving your wife a foot massage while you're watching TV?
She's got very tickly feet, and so no, I don't think she'd let me go anywhere near her feet. And to be honest, my wife, when she watches TV, she loves to be in a fluffy duvet, a fluffy dressing gown, her fluffy slippers. She puts her feet up. We've got these sofas that you press a button and the feet come up, and she gets herself into that nice little corner. She has a glass of wine by the side, and at the moment she's going through 360 episodes of the Vampire Diaries. God, when this thing's going to finish, I don't know. But that's her. She doesn't like to be... it's her quiet time. She likes to be there. Okay. And if I'm 2 inches by the side of her, that's okay. But I don't think she'd like me to be fiddling with her feet. Okay, then don't do it. For any guys out there who are listening, if your wife is or girlfriend is into that idea, then I highly recommend that, because when you start using... we can talk about hugs, we can talk about little kisses, little shoulder rubs, this type of thing throughout the day. That's incredibly important for maintaining that emotional connection. But the real power is when you can be in an experience where you are touching her over time, right? So for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? And so I often recommend that people do it in front of the TV, because that's kind of where it can be very convenient to do. So anybody listening who is interested in trying this stuff, start there. And you don't got to be, a world-class massage therapist or anything like that. I recommend the feet because I don't know if you've ever seen the footwear that our women have to wear. Like some of it's pretty brutal, right? So again, going back to the 80-20 principle, if you're looking at creating low-stakes learning where you can experience success without having a bunch of ways to screw the experience up, that would be a foot massage, because most of women's feet are so sore and tired and hurting that just gentle squeezing can feel amazing. So that's kind of where I like to start. But again, just look for little moments throughout the day to start bringing touch into the relationship without the implication that this is going to get sexual. Let her body decide when it's going to get sexual, and it'll be fun. Well, I don't know how to bring these words onto the show, but I've got to play these because this is part of Join Up Dots. But we don't normally go from sexy time to Steve Jobs, but I'll be fascinated to get your spin on this. So here he is, Steve Jobs. Sorry about this build-up, Steve, but this is what you're going to get.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Now, you seem to me, Mark, to be a man who buys into those words. Do you look back on your own life and go, yeah, I can see how one thing's lined up after another? Or is it too random to actually say, yes, Mr. Jobs, you're right?
Oh, I completely agree. I lived my life by that very idea that if you look at my life, it's an embodiment of that principle completely. So yeah, I totally get it. And, it's cool, right? You hear these types of speeches and it's very exciting and it's very inspirational. But at the same time, like if you're going to commit to living like that, like it's scary. So anybody who's, kind of like, okay, my life doesn't make sense, but I'm just going to kind of go for it. Like, just know it's not necessarily as comfortable or as feel good as it, well, it's like he says, looking back, you're like, yeah, this was awesome. But when you're going through it, yeah, it's tough, but totally worth it.
And do you have a big dot in your life when you look back at everything where you kind of go, yeah, I think that's when it started changing for me. That's when my path started to become visible.
I was thinking about this, and the first thing that came to mind was when I lived in Indonesia. I was about 10 years old. We were on a little, like, it was a small school. There was like maybe 13 of us from kindergartens to high school. And the teachers there were it was kind of a husband-wife combo, and that were leading the school. And they were very, very forward thinking. Like a lot of the new alternative education systems that I see popping up now, I go, oh, that sounds like what we were doing back in the mid to late 90s in Indonesia. And so anyways, what happened was that the last two or 3 months of the school year, they shut down all formal learning, and we basically put on a play. We had songs, we had dances, we just did a massive production. And the kids were involved with all aspects of it. And so we all kind of came together as a team and all had roles, and we all did our thing. Excuse me, 1 second. And then with the money that we ended up getting from the show, we went to the open markets of Indonesia, which is quite an experience. And we went around to all the different vendors and we looked for the best prices to get just a bunch of different staples, rice, and I think there was some type of a noodle and just some different food staples. And then we brought it back to the school. We packaged it all up in bags. And then we all loaded it onto this boat, took it across to this island where this village was struggling. They were starving, or they had a bad year. And so we came with this food to give to them. And that was impactful for a 10-year-old to have done such a large scale project with a bunch of people together as a community. And then the end result is to help out a community like that in need and be involved in every step of the way. That was, I still have a hard time articulating exactly what that experience did for me, but that was a big deal. That was a really big deal. And I think it really changed the trajectory of my life and what I thought was important.
It is strange that when you get to that big dot story, more often than not, you can't quite grasp why, but it is like your body knows before you know. And I do think that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, most of us will look back and go, yeah, that's it now, I can understand that now. But it's all about feelings, isn't it, Mark? I suppose this whole episode has been all about feelings, but whether you're building the entrepreneurial journey or you're connecting with your partner, it is all about understanding yourself and building that connection around feelings. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. When you can sort of strip away all the stuff that's been piled on you, right? Because, let's be honest, the cultures that we're growing up in, they're not giving us a lot of super healthy values. There's not a lot of people who are coming out of their teen years or 20s or even waking up in their 30s and 40s and being like, wow, all this stuff has been really helpful. There's lots of pain. There's lots of letting go of old things going on right now. It's tough out there. And so when you can kind of get in touch with, these major experiences or like have these experiences and then determine what they mean to you, yourself, I think that is like the compass. We're so used to taking other people's advice and listening to other people for what we should do. But the more you can have genuine experiences like this, the more frame of reference you're going to get for who you are as an individual. The more you know who you are, the easier it's going to be to tell where you should go and what your life should be about. And then, get all your dots in line. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, whoa, it makes sense. And I have something to say now. So, yeah.
I'm actually the host of another show, which you only get if you're a member of my coaching group. And I did an episode yesterday that ties in nicely with that, about you are the expert in yourself. And the world is full of people giving you opinions of how you should be doing this, how you should be doing that. And more often than not, we know what we should be doing, what is right for us. But we don't. We look around and we think that everybody else has got the answer. But it's once again, it's about knowing yourself, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that is the most important thing for the coming years. I think, especially my generation, we have to start thinking about, relationships. We got to start thinking about kind of every structure that's out there. Like, a lot of stuff needs changing, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be a part of it. So I think that we really start, each individual has to start giving themselves more credit for what they're capable of doing. I think that's if you don't want to give yourself credit, then go ahead, that's fine too. But we could all do with a little bit more self-empowerment and trust in ourselves, I think.
Absolutely. Mark said that, and I've said that over the last 600 episodes. If you don't get it now, that is all down to you, and whatever you want to do, you may not be an expert at the beginning, but by actually working towards it little by little, you will improve. And the great thing about it, in every environment, you are surrounded by people starting, but so many of them just drop off, and then you're into the next group, and your quality will get better as you keep on moving through. And once you get to the point where the noise starts sort of fading out, then you start getting recognized and people will naturally come to you. It takes a while. It does take a while, and there's no such thing as overnight success. But what I will say to every single one of you, that you're on this planet for quite a long time, but actually it doesn't feel very long. I'm 46 years old. I look at it now and I think, bloody hell, 46 years, it's just gone. I remember when I was riding around on my bike as a 7-year-old, just sort of having fun. Now I think to myself, God, what have I done with my life? Well, what I have done with my life is that I've set myself up for the next 46 years, and hopefully I'll be around till 100 and plus. Don't know if I'll be doing join up dots then, but if I am, hopefully you're still listening to me. But we've got time on this planet to start, we've got time on the planet to develop, and we've got time to actually finish and get to what we want, and that is the dream. That was profound, Mark, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
I felt like some music in the background there. I felt like one moment in time. I won't go for the high note. Only Whitney can do that. Now, this is the part of the show that we've been building up to, which has got its own perfect music, and this is the Sermon on the Mic, when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you can go back in time and speak to the young Mark, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Mark, you are 19 years old. Understand that the thoughts in your head, the beliefs you have about the world, and the experiences you are having are not actually your own. The reality you're experiencing is a result of your parents' history, your grandparents' history, your great-grandparents' history, and on down the line. And stacked on top of that is mostly just a bunch of insecurities and false fears that you've picked up from the culture you live in, but aren't quite sure how to put down. You are more permeable than you realize, and you can't see who you truly are. I see the pain that causes you. Know that the challenges you are facing are yours to deal with, but they are not who you are. That cold, hard separateness you feel, it's not real. It's an illusion that you're using to temper yourself so you have a better appreciation of what you will experience in the future. I know you distrust absolutely everything around you, from school to work, the way the adults are living, the very reason for life itself, and it's okay to do so. The questions you are asking are legitimate ones, even if no one else can relate to or understand what you're doing. I want you to know that help is on the way. Teachers, friends, and guides are coming. Things will start to make sense. You are not alone. I want to thank you for the gift of your toil, the gift of your struggle, the gift of your courage to move forward and stick to your own path when nothing else around you makes sense. And I want to repay you with the gift of my own. So next time you're in one of those quiet moments of inner turmoil, frustration, or rage at the people around you, or even yourself, just know that everything's okay and it's all going to work out. You have permission to relax because you really are doing it. Thank you, my brother.
Mark, what's the number one best way that our audience can connect with you?
You can email me, mark@markstefanishyn.com, and that's MarkStefanishyn. And I would absolutely love to hear from your listeners. That's the best way. Your website is markstefanishyn.com. And those are the two main ways. Those would be the best. Yeah.
I think there's going to be so many men out there that need your help big time, sir. And from me personally, just need to say thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the best way to build our futures. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. It was that was fun.
So you take one idea which isn't seemingly connected with another idea, and you become raw and open, and you start building a business based on that. He's taken the 80-20 principle and he's placed it in the area of relationships. So that's quite authentic. That's quite unique. I haven't seen that before. And all he's got to do really is keep on providing the content, keep on getting out there. And I certainly think that is a business that will get bigger and bigger and bigger, because we all need to find better ways of connecting with ourselves, with our partners, and sharing the love. And I think that's what it's all about. So I love that. I love what Mark's doing. And every single one of you out there, you can take an idea, you can put it with another idea, and you can create something which is uniquely and authentically you. And that is how you build success. Thank you so much for listening to this show. This was Join Up Dots episode 557. I'm David Ralph. I will be David Ralph next time as well, and we'll see you again. Cheers. Bye-bye.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.